true.
United States.
Wait, what?
The
What is
Jews
this
are
argument?
indigenous. The Jews are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. It's why Judea is called Judea.
Wait a minute. Benjamin. Since when the fuck do you care about indigenous groups? No, seriously. Again, the history lessons they're meaningless. They're meaningless. They're distractions. This is a fucking waste of time. We understand the situation on the ground.
People standing for the terror.
Ah, yes. Okay, so let's all keep in mind, let's all remember our priors. Ben Shapiro, Zionist, xenophobe, racist. We all know the deal. Fascist, almost certainly. At the end of the day, we all know where Ben Shapiro's going to stand. But, Ben Shapiro likes to do this a lot. He likes to do like let me look at the most extreme TikToks that I can find. Let me go seek out the best opponent and demolish them. So let's go see if he was successful in that, and let's respond to some of this nonsense.
Terrorist group. We're going to go through some of their videos, and we will see what shining bright moral lights they have, how much nuance they can provide. This video is sponsored by our friends at Genucel.
Whenever you start losing hope, just remember that this hashtag, the ones that say stand with Israel, got millions of views, but the Palestine ones got multi-millions of views.
Oh, god damn, that's a B.
Baby, almost triple. Don't ever let the media fool you. The people stand with Palestine. This is with all of the money that Israel spends on propaganda.
That's also true.
It doesn't matter. The people are still hashtagging Palestine way more and viewing it way more than Israel. So don't ever forget that.
You know why that is? Because there are 15 million Jews on the planet, and there are 1 billion Muslims on the planet.
Wait a minute. Whoa, Ben. Do you see how quick this turned into a holy war for him? Do you see? That took 0.08 seconds. That took no time for him to go with it's obviously because the Muslims around the world have all come together and agreed that, no, you can, my dude. The global Muslims or whatever. And understand, this is no different. What he's going to argue here is that there's some kind of global Muslim movement or whatever, or some global Muslim whatever. It's no different than the Jewish question dog whistle, than the Jews run the world. That's all he's doing. All he's doing is obviously the Muslims run the world. So that's why it has so many views. No, Ben, unfortunately for you, it's simply that, a lot of people see what's going on in Gaza. A lot of people see what's going on to the people of Palestine and go, those are a lot of civilians. A lot more than it seems like need to die. And they're disgusted by it. And you're not, because you're a racist. You're an ethno-nationalist. We all know Ben Shapiro is a deep Zionist. So, let's always remember our priors here. Because again, and I mean this in the starkest terms, to Ben Shapiro, this is nothing more than a holy war. This is nothing more than a holy war. He just wants Muslims dead. That's it. That is beginning and end of all of his concern for all of this.
The planet. That would be the reason. I love the conspiratorial. The Jews with their money and those moneyed Jews. But we are still winning because the people love us.
Well, keep in mind, let's all keep in mind that Israel has been spending a lot of money on propaganda. If you don't think that, you're insane. But again, Ben Shapiro has to draw the same, the equivalence of Israel with the Jewish faith. Israel and Judaism are the same to him. Again, ethno-nationalist. Let's all remember this. So for him, they're the same thing. For normal people, you, me, and normal folks, Israel is a nation state. That's really about it. It's a nation state. They get treated like a nation state. I have no problem with Jewish people. I quite like Jewish people, actually. But, Ben Shapiro Israel has to make their government the word on what is and isn't good Judaism. What's Sam Cedar all say? The Pope of the Jews, right?
Or maybe there are 1 billion Muslims and a huge number of them hate Israel and are anti-Semitic.
I wonder why a lot of Muslims don't like Israel, who's been occupying, you know, at the very least, a similarly to them ethnic group's land under the guise of, again, some kind of a weird holy war. By the way, I've heard some people do like I think I saw it was Hassan watching one of like Ben's videos explaining the conflict. Garbage video, by the way. But like, you know, it starts with like, oh, well, we need to go back to the Bible or whatever. And it's like, no, I don't care. I don't give even two shits about the holy war aspect of any of this. You all can, like, again, this is all like this is where the secularist in me is like, you can all fuck off with your holy wars. This is all the type of shit that it leads to, is a bunch of extremist groups fighting each other. The only difference is we've legitimized one of them, that being the right-wing government of Israel.
Very careful of what you say about Israel. Any believer going against Israel, you are making yourself an enemy against God.
I don't know how this Zionist propaganda made it to the black community, but it is incorrect.
Goddamn.
First of all, Palestinians and Israelis worship the same God. It's the God from the Abrahamic religions.
True.
Second of all, Palestine is not going against God by not wanting to give up their land to Israel, land that they've lived on for hundreds of thousands of years.
Well,
Yeah, like literally. Well, it's also like, who cares? Like, they were living, even if they were living there 10 years ago, I don't really care. Especially if your justification is, God said that's our land. Well, you can bring God into the UN and he can draw the lines then.
oh, hundreds of thousands. That's an amazing piece of news. Hundreds of thousands of years Palestinians have been living there? That's kind of strange. Hundreds of thousands of years.
Is he going to
This
cite?
person's a
Is he going to
historical
cite
genius. As far as the Palestinians and the Israelis are worshiping the same God, it is true that Allah and God are the same God. It is
Yeah.
not true that the Palestinians are worshiping the same God as the Israelis, not in this conflict, where Hamas is worshiping a death cult.
If the
What? Huh? What? What? They see themselves as resistance fighters, most likely. I would kind of presume they just think themselves as, again, not dissimilar to Ben Shapiro, ethnic resistance fighters.
U.S. and the European nations are so for Israel, they
Yeah,
should
no shit.
give them land from Europe or land from
True.
the United States.
Wait,
to
what?
live
The
on.
is
Jews
this
are
argument?
indigenous. The Jews are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. It's why Judea is called Judea. God.
Wait a minute. Benjamin. Since when the fuck do you care about indigenous groups? No, seriously. Since when the fuck does Ben Shapiro give even a quarter shit about indigenous groups? Let's be very clear. Israel and Ben Shapiro's interest in its indigenous nature is again a smokescreen. He doesn't give a shit about any of that. If he cared about the rights of indigenous groups, he'd be a land back activist. But is he? No. If you ask Ben Shapiro, we won America by beating the Native Americans in a perfectly fair in a perfectly fair fight, that we did not steal this land. He would argue that, because again, it doesn't matter to him. At the end of the day, for Ben Shapiro, he's like, well, my book says it's our land, so it's kind of our land. Which again, this is a simple, I don't care. This is a simple, we live in, this is 2023, bruv. I don't have to give a shit about your dumb fucking holy book, which again leads you to this kind of nonsense thinking. At the end of the day, there are Palestinians who are living there, and they were being forcibly moved out of their homes and relocated, which I don't care what a holy book says. I don't care what the lines are drawn in that holy book. I don't care. At the end of the day, that's displacement, which in modern society is, not okay. Is like bad. It's like not good. I don't like it.
The historic ignorance here, suggesting the Jews are somehow the colonial outpost in the Middle East, when Jews predated the existence of Islam by some 2 millennia or so. It's so crazy. These people don't know anything. They're so ignorant, and they are so unbelievable.
Why does it matter? Again, like, do you know how many like different religious groups predate the Jews then? Did they get a claim to, does everybody get a claim to their indigenous lands all of a sudden? Trust me, he doesn't believe that. Because I can promise you, you could probably find some other civilization that was also probably living in the same area that also has some claim to land. What matters isn't the history of any of this nonsense. Because we can do the history. Let's flip the book all the way back until I get to my fucking Bible. Or I guess in his case, the Torah. But like, it doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? It's 2023. The lines have been drawn. We have international law. We have standards for warfare. The UN has already condemned Israel's expansion and their settlements. We're done here. We don't need to have this. This is a nonsense conversation piece. Displacement of people. I don't care if you've got a book that justifies it. Fuck off. Like, no.
Unbelievably stupid. By the way, the argument that she's making about repatriating Jews to, say, Europe, where last time Jews were repatriated there, you know, it ended really poorly. You know what I noticed? If you look at a map of the Middle East, Israel is like this big. And if you look at all the Muslim countries surrounding it, they're like this big. And yet none of them are taking in any of the Palestinian refugees. Weird. Weird how that works.
Again, you know, you can call me crazy. You can call me uneducated. Last time I checked, it was Israel who controlled the borders in Gaza and decide if people get to come and go as they please. And it seems like they haven't been incredibly interested with letting Palestinians come and go. Also, by the way, I don't think they should be forced to have to leave. Those people have lived there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's more than enough for me. As far as I'm concerned, you got the deed to the land. It's good enough for me. So why should they have to leave anyway? Why are they being restricted? Why is their movement being restricted? I thought we believed in freedom, Benjamin. I thought we were a libertarian or whatever, Benjamin.
Strange. Doesn't matter that 800,000 Jews were expelled from Arab and Muslim lands in 1948 to 1957. That doesn't matter. And that Israel took all of them in, and 0 Palestinians have been absorbed by anyone in the surrounding area, specifically to use as a tool against the Jews. Now, really, the United States should set aside a part of.
What's the tool? Like what's the tool? Like what was the purpose? They live there and you occupy them for what purpose? Like again, you kind of got to be bought into a lot of this stuff, but it's like, well, for what? Why are you guys occupying them? Why not just leave them alone? Let them have their little slice that they've been living in. Why is Israel expanding into their land? Why have they been kicking people out of their homes? It's just a question. Also, keep in mind, Ben Shapiro also, funnily enough, wants to talk about, there's all these other huge countries. Last I checked, they don't have an Iron Dome. And last I checked, they don't have the support of the world's largest military behind them, the United States. And keep in mind, everybody who protests, everybody who stands with Palestine, understand what they're seeking. The action that they are seeking is a cease in support from the U.S. I don't control what the Israeli government does, but I damn sure can control what the U.S. government does. So I speak out against the U.S.'s participation in all of this. And through that pressure, hopefully, convinces the U.S. officials to back out of their support, which then would leave Israel with not quite as many resources to continue their occupation, but at the very least, our hands can be not really clean, but at the very least, hands off after a point, and let everybody come to an agreement among themselves. The U.S. is at the end of the day involved in this. We are standing with Israel in their bombing campaigns, and that is what most people, especially in the U.S., are looking for, a cease to that, aside from obviously a ceasefire.
Montana for the Jews, in the historic Jewish homeland of Montana. God, these people are just, what?
Again, and every time he talks about indigenous and talks about land back and talks about any of this, every time he talks about that, remember, he doesn't hold this opinion. This isn't a position Ben Shapiro holds for any other group. This is only for Israel. Israel is the only group that gets to claim indigenous rights to land. Native Americans, they can fuck right off.
I can't even critique the stupidity. Every moment I spend with these people makes me dumber. It's unreal.
They should let them make a country there, not on Palestine.
Palestine is a fiction. Palestine is a fiction. It was made up by the Romans after the expulsion of Jews in 136 CE after the Bar Kokhba revolt. And it was made...
See what I mean? We have to go back to fucking BC times, brother. Like, you can spare me with this.
Made up with the name Palestine specifically to mock the Jews because they're
cares?
supposed to be a
over it.
representation of the Philistines.
The Bible
Cool, who
does not
cares?
say anything about Israel because Israel was created in 1948 when the British and the United Nations decided.
Oh, by the way, yeah, I mean, obviously we all have to remember that like a lot of this, what we're seeing right now, was all set up by the, what's the word I'm looking for? The what's the word? Interference by Western forces in the region. You know, like at the end of the day, this was British and US forces and Western forces in general, drawing lines for a region of the world they are not at all in charge of and have no claim over. And again, Ben Shapiro, he likes that relationship where Western forces draw them a nice line and go, all right, we drew the lines. You get the land you want. They get whatever, and when they fall into some trouble, when they occupy some territory, when they kill some civilians, and Western forces just kind of go like, we appreciate you not doing that, but I guess if you're going to do it, then we kind of got to support you. But, it's just, we already fucked this up with our involvement, and our involvement ever since then has only continued to further fuck up the region. We have as Western powers, we have just utterly failed the Middle East in terms of trying to shepherd it into democracy and all the rest of the stuff that we venerate here, which I think are good values, democracy, liberty, stuff like that. Like, I think all of that is good, but we have done an utter shit, garbage, dog shit job of shepherding those values into the region.
Fight a war with Palestine.
What the f*** is she talking about? What in the world is she talking about? Fight a war with
Do you think
Palestine?
Ben's going to talk to anybody who's...
this is such...
I know, I'm stopping and pausing a lot, but I'm always wondering, I'm like, is Ben going to ever talk to anybody with like credentials? Or is he just going to listen to people on TikTok who did some research? But like, is he going to talk to like, anybody with real credentials on any of this stuff? He never will. He never will because he knows he'll get blown the fuck out. By the way, that's not
These
me.
people are morons. They're morons. The British mandate was in place until 1947. The Balfour Declaration declared a Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan. That would be Israel and what is today Jordan. And then, over subsequent years, the British then whittled that down. They cut off all of Jordan and handed it to the Arabs.
It's almost like they shouldn't have done any of that because it's not their land. Like, you can't claim like, oh no, it was fine when the colonists did that earlier. Like, come on now. Like that wasn't okay then either, Ben.
They then cut off most of the land of Israel and handed it to the Arabs. Israel and the Jews accepted every one of those deals, every one of them, including a rump state that was indefensible. What was called by many Jews the Auschwitz borders after World War II because it was so indefensible. The Jews accepted every one of those deals. The Arabs rejected every one of those deals. What the hell is she? And then she's suggesting that the United...
Also keep in mind, it's not really surprising that conflict would inevitably, no matter what, really, I think inevitably occur in the region, mainly because Jerusalem is the center point for like three major religions in the world, like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Like, that region was always going to be rife with tension, I think, and conflict over like that kind of land. But that's like another conversation for like, well, this is why you set up secular governments. But yeah, and like, again, I have criticisms for like a lot of the region, Saudi Arabia, even Iran, all of them. But like, that doesn't make what like Israel has done with Palestine any bit justifiable. Any bit justifiable.
The United States and the Brits fought a war against the Arabs here? The British, during the 1930s, restricted Jewish immigration into British Mandate Palestine at the behest of the Arabs, leaving millions of Jews to die in Europe. It was so bad that the Jews in Israel had to smuggle Jews in boats, trying to evade the British in order to get Jews away from the Holocaust that was happening in Europe. The Jews were for...
Yeah? Let's be clear. I don't really think Jewish people have had it incredibly easy. I just don't like ethno-states. Like, which is what Israel has turned into. It hasn't turned into like the secular democracy in the region. They're just another ethno-state.
Forbidden from actually importing either guns or ammunition into British Mandate Palestine, necessitating the creation of underground bullet factories in the state of Israel in order so they could even defend themselves. When the British Mandate
And then the U.S. supplied them with arms for like, what, the last 40 years or some shit? Like, come on.
ended, the British summarily turned over many of the key strategic locations and weapons to the Arabs. Again, these people don't know history. They don't even pretend to know.
Keep in mind, I told you, Arabs, it's all Arabs, Muslims, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's just a holy war to him.
History. They Google something on Wikipedia and then promptly fail to even interpret it properly.
And cut that country in half to create an ethno-state for Ashkenazi Jewish people. And ever since that war, Israel has taken more and more and more of
I don't really need the Ashkenazi. It's not those state. That's what it is. We all know it's an ethno-state.
Palestine's
Okay,
territory.
Israel accepted the partition plan by the UN in 1947-48. The Arabs rejected it and launched a war. Israel won the war and got a little bit more territory. In 1967, the Arab nations launched an all-out war to destroy Israel, and in 6 days, Israel took the entirety of what is now modern-day Israel, including Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. In 1973, another all-out war by the Arabs. In 1979, Israel gave back the entire Sinai Desert to Egypt. In 1995, under the Oslo Accords, Israel surrendered the Gaza Strip as well as large swaths of Judea and Samaria to terrorist groups in order to attempt to buy a peace. These people don't know anything about history. They don't even pretend to know anything about history. It's absurd.
Let's be clear. History is important, but unfortunately the problem is, and I make this point, and I'm going to make this very clear. Ben's going to spend all his time giving us the history of Israel because he doesn't want to talk about the relationship that the Israeli government has to the people of Palestine. He just doesn't. He wants to talk about every other fucking thing because he doesn't give a shit. Because as far as Ben Shapiro is concerned, if you're Palestinian and you're living in Gaza, then you can fucking die or leave. Those are the two things you can do. If you lived there before, get out. And if you lived there before, die. Those are the two options that Ben Shapiro wants for people of Palestine. I don't give even a quarter shit about all this historical bullshit. Because at the end of the day, they have been occupying these people for 75 fucking years. If they wanted some kind of peace in the region, or at the very least, not to have Hamas build up, then guess what? They could have ended the occupation. But no. They wanted their land. They wanted everything else. It's just one group has power and has had power for a long time, and the other hasn't. And we have watched, we have stood idly by in this country as the one with power oppresses the other. And meanwhile, what does Ben want to talk about? Holy war, Muslims versus Jew bullshit. Because that's the only lens that he understands this from. It's not people. It's not human beings trying to get by, live their life like normal people. This is a holy war conflict ground for them. And I'm fucking sick of it. I'm not playing. I don't live in fucking Assassin's Creed 1. I don't live in that time period. Can we move the fuck on with this bullshit? Like, for God's sake, they've had the backing of the U.S. military for how long now? And not once have they thought to use that force for anything other than oppression.
We'll get to more on this in just one bags. And Pearl's director of this show, decade the correct to come. Just extra disc, the best you'll get, and you see all package. Genucell. Genucell.com/Ben.
That's whatever.
Never feel ashamed of our support of the Palestinian people. We will never be.
By the way, remember when I drew a distinction between Hamas and Palestinians? Ben's not going to do that, by the way. And that's the difference between me and him. That's the difference between people who are like, empathetic, people who care about human beings, who are actually pro-life. That's the difference between us. Is Ben Shapiro does not see a difference between a member of Hamas and a Palestinian. There just isn't a degree of separation, Stam.
Black student organizers at Harvard are being attacked by Zionist and right-wing forces for their support of Palestine. Their faces are being shown on trucks around campus, accusing them of being anti-Semites.
Well, okay, actually, can we fill that in right there?
Also, keep in mind accuracy in media. Like, again, these are media organizations. You can't, like, I don't really care that they're Zionists. I don't really care about that aspect. At the end of the day, there is money being funneled to quiet people from speaking out in support of Palestinian civilians. Like, I know people who have family over there that are almost assured that they're not going to be there. Like I asked them the other day, like, how their family is doing. And they were like, well, I mean, they got arrested for, I don't know, just being out and about and probably isn't going to live through the night. And it's just like, again, there's one group that has power in this. And Ben can do all the historyifying that he wants. But none of this, none of his history, none of this shit changes the relationship that the Israeli government has to the people of Palestine. That's the only thing I care about. I care about civilians in Palestine. I care about civilians in Israel. And unfortunately for the civilians of Israel, their government doesn't give enough of a shit to not sacrifice them for their bombing campaign. They just don't. They just don't. All the people who get kidnapped, all the Israelis that get kidnapped, those civilians, they're just martyrs. They're just tools to motivate the people to be okay with more bombing of Palestinians. That's all it is. That's all it is.
The reason that those trucks are on campus is because a bunch of student groups signed a statement blaming Israel for the massacre of Jews and backing Hamas. That would be the reason.
Whoa, was it that last part? Because I can believe the first two. I can definitely believe the first two. Because at the end of the day, if you would like to talk history, Ben, if you would like to not try to, abstract it by talking about history over 60 or whatever years ago, or I guess now we're in the 20s. Yeah, that was more like 80 years ago. Point is, if you would not like to obsess over nonsense history of like, oh, well, the lines were drawn back in the whatever, and we lived in the area of the original indigenous. If you would like to talk about actual contemporary history and the power that the state had, of Israel, that the state had, then again, you would mention that they've been the one occupying this group of people. They could just leave them alone. It's almost like leaving people alone wouldn't create extremist movements. And it's almost like extremist movements wouldn't motivate people to vote for right-wing candidates. It's almost like being right-wing is the problem. Being a fundamentalist is kind of the problem. Being a racist and ethno-nationalist is the problem.
That would be the actual reason.
But despite these efforts to derail their organizing, they say they will not be deterred.
We resolutely stand in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance against the apartheid state that is Israel.
Ooh, let's talk about that. Okay, let's talk about that because I've seen a decent bit of people saying Palestinian resistance, right? And that actually, I think, is not great rhetoric. Standing with Palestinian civilians, absolutely great stuff. Palestinian resistance. So let's switch for a second. Let's you and I all let's talk 1v1 for a second. All right. Let us be very clear. Okay. Let us be really clear here. Hamas is not a resistance movement. They are not a revolutionary resistance what's the word I'm looking for? Organization for the freeing of Palestinians. What Hamas is like a lot of groups, some groups in the area, a terror organization. They are at the end of the day a terror cell. Now, where they are operating and how they are operating is, I don't really think at the behest or even in the best interest of Palestinian civilians. Palestinian civilians are people living in a city, people going about their lives, trying to, stay fed, trying to stay entertained, trying to go about their normal lives. What Hamas are the people in that society who have been pushed to the utter brink, and I think have kind of given up a lot of the I think hope, or at the very least belief that the status quo will ever change, that they will be unoccupied at some point. But like, Hamas is not and we need to not draw a similarity or a equivalence of resistance movement and Hamas. As a leftist, I don't think these aren't the same groups. What Hamas is a extremist group, is a group of people that recruit people who've lost everything, people who've lost all of their family, all of their hope, I think, in a change, and have adopted violence. Hamas engages in violence. They do not abstain from the killing of civilians. That's not a thing that they do. So we cannot draw this equivalence, this similarity, any of this, with Hamas and a formal resistance movement. These people are the most desperate of this group, the most desperate, and are lashing out. And while I have sympathy for the situation that put them in that mindset, I do not support, and I vehemently denounce Hamas's terroristic actions the same way I do for the IDF, the same way that I draw personally, and I hope people understand this, and I hope that people are making this distinction in their lives as well. We need to draw a distinction between the two extremist groups, the IDF, and I batch in the IDF and the Israeli government and its people, and the Palestinian civilians and their people, and Hamas. There are two extreme forces, and there is everyone caught in the middle. And the lives we are trying to preserve are those in the middle. That group in the middle of people just going about their lives, trying to get by like everybody else. Those are the lives I care about. Those are the people we need to be concerned with, and who we need to stand with, and not confuse Hamas's lashing out, not confuse their, quite frankly, what I think they probably see as vengeance as resistance. It's not. It just isn't. The same way we can't look at what the IDF is doing and call that resistance, or as they call it, defense. It's not either. So let's get that really clear. I've seen videos of rallies of people saying resistance, and I don't like that. I'm not a fan of citing Palestinian resistance as an implication, mainly because you're implying that Hamas is a resistance group, and they're not. So, we need to draw that distinction. We need to always remember that. But anyway, back to the video.
Genocide of the Palestinian people right now.
Shamefully,
That's good.
it is primarily black and Arab students that are facing the brunt of these racist attacks.
Oh, I mean, I feel terrible for you. I feel so terrible for you. You're leading a terrible life. I mean, you're the subject of such racist attacks. I mean, not like the babies who were burned to death in the Gaza envelope, but really, it's been very rough for you when people actually...
Again, the only babies... again, keep in mind, he says babies. He only cares about one kind of baby. Babies is just a thing to tug at your heartstrings.
show your face on a billboard and say that you hate Jews when you're clearly standing for a terrorist group.
It's funny.
I feel so terrible
it's
for you.
really funny.
Ugh,
I didn't see the sign that said I
horror.
hate Jews.
Ugh, the victimization.
It's almost like
None of that changes our
people just don't like the Israeli government. Even the Israeli people don't really love their government right now.
believe in a free Palestine from the river to the sea.
Ah, there it is. From the river to the sea. The river to the sea, by the way, is extermination of Israel. It's the Jordan River, the Mediterranean Sea. That means no Jews. All dead. That's what that means.
The leaders of past resistance movements
Wait, what? Wait, Ben. Do you kind of see the difference here? Because to Ben, a free Palestine, which is just a free people, by the way, is the extermination of Jews. Instead of, and by the way, I don't really think this is a hard ask, Could just coexist. You know? Again, I said earlier, region rife with tension because of, Holy Land and everything. But like, for Ben Shapiro and Zionists like him, there is no living amongst Palestinians. There just isn't. It's them or us to them, which is completely fucked. And it's why they don't care. It's why they just bomb the shit out of it. And they don't care. Because to them it's like, well, if we let the Palestinians live, they'll kill all of us. And it's just like, well, it's what a lot of oppressors say. It's what a lot of powerful groups say. We can't allow these other groups to sustain, to grow, to thrive, because it might threaten us in some vague ass way. And that's Ben Shapiro's politics. There is no free Palestine without a dead Israel. Where unlike, where us rational people, you just coexist amongst each other. But again, Ben doesn't believe in coexistence. This is also why, he's also a God Squad kind of guy. He doesn't really believe that secularists and everybody else can get along. We all eventually have to clash. Ben Shapiro's a person that doesn't think that we can all get along. He just thinks our differences are too much, and that's what makes him a conservative.
Never cowered and never shied away. We are here today to do the exact same.
That's Spider-Man?
Okay, well, that's fine.
No, I
You
think
just don't
that's
have to
a
work
red
for any
sign.
big law firm. That's okay. It seems to me that if you are a big business, if you are a legal firm, you have no obligation to hire people who support baby murderers.
Actually,
Excuse me? Well, wait, Ben, isn't that cancel culture? I'm sorry. I thought we didn't believe in cancel culture on the right.
Hamas started this whole thing. Remember October 7th? Actually, that's wrong. Before October 7th, Israeli security forces killed 248 Palestinians, and 40 of them were children, and that was just this year. And if you want to go back further than that, we can look at the recent history of war crimes committed by the Israeli government. Operation Protective Edge in
I like this. Okay, so this is what I mean. There's a lot, the rhetoric around this is really, 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 really fucking important to me. But I like I like to see when people say Israeli government or again the or IDF. It's the same thing. But that's a lot cleaner in my opinion, because you don't want to. This isn't about. Again, this isn't I never want to make this about Jews and Muslims, and I don't want to make this about Israelis and Palestinians. This is at the end of the day about the Israeli government and their policy on Palestinian lives.
2014, Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, Operation Cast Lead in 2009.
What started each
What are
one of those
these
operations? Islamic barrages of rockets into civilian centers in Israel. That's what started each one of these operations. I love this moron. I guess the idea here is that, if you point out that what has caused the current conflict is the mass.
You know what's funny? By this logic, all you have to say is, well, what caused those barrages? And then you just keep doing that, where it's like, well, what caused this? Well, this was a response to that. And that was a response to this. And it's never ending. But again, and this is why Israel is more at fault here for this entire conflict. They have always had the power to press the stop button on that tit for tat. And they've decided every single time to not do so. The Israeli government. The government's just never decided, maybe we should just stop. Maybe we're good. Maybe we can find a way to just be like, nah. But again, I said it earlier, there's somebody who's going to benefit, and they might be the prime minister. Who knows?
Massacre of 1,500 Jews. Like, well, before that, Israel killed other Palestinians. You're like, yeah, but why would they do that? And the answer is because they were associated with terrorist groups. And he's like, yeah, but what about the conflict before?
Associated with terrorist groups. By the way, I love that. Even Ben can't lie correctly, or at the very least, he can't even lie well. Associated with terrorist groups. You don't have any idea how many people we bombed in Iraq and Afghanistan because we believe that they were associated with terrorist groups? Yeah, this is just I don't know. We kind of got a hint that there might be one member of Hamas in this one family. So we decided to fucking nuke the whole family. Why not? We get everybody, then nobody's coming out for revenge.
You mean because the terrorists were firing rockets into Israel? It's an infinite regress of dumb here. Just name a
Iron
bunch of
Dome?
operations
Iron
without
Dome?
actually
Iron
explaining
Dome?
why
Am I
the
crazy?
operations
Iron
were
Dome?
initiated.
Yeah, but you don't mention why Cast Lead happened. Hamas fired rockets into Israel. And that was because Israel broke the ceasefire agreement they had on November 4th, 2008, while the entire world was in euphoria over the United States electing its first black president, Barack Obama. Israel used the opportunity to break the ceasefire agreement and raid Gaza and kill Palestinians.
Again, I don't need to. Okay, let me be clear. I'm not an expert, but if that timeline's actually, accurate, I'd say that's a pretty good start point then to the current conflict. I mean, certainly, obviously, we're not going to discount the last 75 years of occupation, but any ceasefire is basically like, okay, if we're going to stop right now, if this is the ceasefire, then, whatever, then we're this, once it starts up again, it's on whoever. But it doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't matter anyway, because at the end of the day, Israel's always had the power in the relationship. So it still falls on them for continuing to sacrifice their citizens so that they get an opportunity to kill some Palestinians.
For no reason, they're just raiding Gaza, just for fun. They just raid Gaza. To do what exactly? To steal their nothing? What would the raid entail? What would be the purpose of such a raid?
Ooh,
can you explain?
Are we not going to
what are the raid? Great valuable jewels being held in Gaza that the Israelis desperately need to get their hands on? Israel's so desperate.
Whoa, Ben! What was that? The anti-Jewish sentiment there, like implying that your people are greedy or something. Whoa, buddy, calm down.
Wanted not to be in Gaza. They surrendered the place to a fucking terrorist group for 20 years, who then spent every last dime building rockets and terror tunnels so as to murder 1,500 Jews.
Yeah, because they've been occupied the entire time. If you left them alone, you wouldn't see the rise of Hamas. Like, again, Palestinian Authority was depowered. Like they were an organization that was a more legitimate and less like extremist faction, but they weren't really taken seriously. And if I can find that quote, there was like a quote from I think Netanyahu. I got to find it real quick.
One thing that I've noticed, they keep saying they're running out of power, they're running out of fuel, they're running out of water. You know the thing they haven't been running out of? Rockets.
Well, you're leaving out a lot of context. You got to go back further than that. To 1967? Yeah, let's go back to 1967 when Israel started a preemptive war.
Egypt was mobilizing its air force.
Syria and Jordan, and took more land from Palestine, further enclosing Palestinians into the Gaza Strip. They illegally occupied the Gaza Strip and the West Bank.
Which, by the way, the UN has already, not the US sadly, but the UN has already, we already settled. This is already settled. Like the occupation, the occupation's already like condemned by the UN anyway.
What has been formally condemned ever since 1967 as an illegal occupation in violation of international law, unilaterally condemned by the World Court.
Who gives a shit about the World Court?
True.
You mean organizations staffed by people?
Yep. Oh, did an organization that's like, did an organization in the UN condemn something? No, I don't care. I just don't care. Because it's always like, Ben wants to do, it's always like if anybody disagrees, I just don't care. And it's like, all right, that's fine. But like, at the end of the day, like, it is the government that you support killing a bunch of civilians, which, again, if all you care about is civilians, if all you care about is life, like somebody like Ben Shapiro pretends to, it wouldn't really matter if they're Palestinian or not, or whether they're family members of Hamas. Like, you'd be disturbed by all of this anyway. But, again, Ben Shapiro doesn't give two shits about Palestinian civilians. Oh, man, let's see. Here we go. Let's see. When was this? October 23rd. Oh, October 8th. For years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas. Now it's blown up in our faces. Yep. Okay, this is the sentiment I'm talking about. This is the exact thing I'm talking about. For years, various governments led by Benjamin Netanyahu took an approach that divided power between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, bringing the Palestinian Authority president Mahmoud Abbas to his knees while making moves that propped up the Hamas terror group. The group was to prevent Abbas or anyone else in the Palestinian Authority's West Bank government from advancing toward the establishment of a Palestinian state. Thus, amid this bid to impair Abbas, Hamas was upgraded from a mere terror group to an organization with which Israel held indirect negotiations via Egypt, and one that was allowed to receive infusions of cash from abroad. So like, yeah, at the end of the day, if Ben Shapiro's so worried about the terror group, then maybe Netanyahu and his government shouldn't have propped them up. Like maybe they shouldn't have created the again, it always comes back to, and it's why I blame Netanyahu more than probably anybody else for the conflict going on right now. It's almost like Netanyahu and his government kind of knew they'd benefit from increased and escalated tensions because, again, chaos is a ladder. Like, and look at that. Now he's more in power. He was facing legal troubles earlier, and now those are gone. So it's just, I mean, what do you have to say? It's just like, well, it's almost like one person benefited and a lot of people suffered on both sides. Almost like.
Who hate Israel and the UN and the Red Cross. Like,
by the way. Oh, yeah, the Red Cross. Shut the fuck up, Ben. Oh, by the way, Ben Shapiro doesn't care. Like, Ben Shapiro likes Benjamin Netanyahu mainly because they're both ethno-nationals. Like that's the only reason. Like for Ben Shapiro, he knows that this is a power grab by Netanyahu, and he's fine with it because he's getting the result that he wants, which is the slaughter of Palestinians. That's the thing. That is the core of what Ben Shapiro is interested in.
The Red Cross,
oh my God,
the Geneva Conventions,
the Geneva Conventions. He's doing this in defense of Hamas, the Geneva Conventions.
In the world, all call.
No, this is in condemnation of Israel's actions. Again, there is no difference between condemnation of what Israel does and support of Hamas. They're the same thing to Ben because that's the only argument he really has. Is if you disagree with us, you're anti-Semitic, which is cringe as fuck. Like you can fuck off with that.
On Israel to return to its pre-June 1967 borders.
That's not even true. That's not even true. Even the UN resolutions, which are garbage and stupid, even those UN resolutions.
Yes, UN resolutions that I'm sure if they agreed with Ben, it's always one of the, I agreed with the international community when they gave us our ethno state. I didn't agree when they said that we weren't operating it properly. Like, it's like, yeah, we know.
On Israel to surrender some of the occupied territories. Not all occupied territory. I mean, those are disputed territories. Some occupied territories.
Whoa, Bud. If they're occupied, then no, you shouldn't have them. Occupation is kind of the problem there, buddy.
In more context, you got to go back to 1948. Okay, let's go back to 1948. In 1948, Zionists extirpated about 1 million Palestinians from their homes and forced them to relocate to the Gaza Strip.
What? Excuse me, in 1947-48, there was a full-scale war between Arabs and Israelis. Somewhere between 700 and 800,000 Palestinians either fled or were expelled from areas where there was military activity. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians left in the lead-up to the war and during the war because also...
Yeah, and do you notice this is such a fucking waste of time? Like, do you notice how this is an utter fucking waste of time, considering the ceasefire was in 2008? Like, all of this... everything we're talking about, it like all of the 1948, 1947, waste of time. It's been how long? And you guys have had the ability, and like the Israeli government has had the ability to make a decision on Gaza and the Palestinian people for all this time, and they've just been weighing out their options for 75 years. Like, okay.
Social services had collapsed because the Arab nations were telling them to get out. The other part is that you may have noticed many Arabs remained, which is why 20% of Israel...
Wait a minute. If they were forced to leave, then yeah, what's the tangible difference? They had to flee their homes. Like, what's the tangible difference here?
Israel's population currently is Israeli Arab. The Gaza Strip was then governed by Egypt. I don't see this guy calling for Egypt to form a Palestinian state in the Gaza Strip. The West Bank was completely occupied by Jordan from 48 to 60.
Well, it's too bad they haven't controlled the Gaza Strip in like how fucking long? It's almost like again, the Gaza Strip has been under the control of Israel, and they've done fuck all to do anything except exterminate the people who live there. Like, that's it. Like, they've just been like, we'll just create like the worst possible conditions and hope that a bunch of them leave. Even though it's like, well, that's pretty much a genocide. Like, it's kind of what that is. But again, and Ben's like, but why doesn't Egypt? But it hasn't been in Egypt's control. It's been in your control. The decision making has been in Israel's, in their hands for how fucking long now? So no, this is again, This is why we say, like, the Israeli government is to fault for all of this. It's been up to them how to handle this, and they've chosen do the worst job possible every fucking time.
67. No call for a Palestinian state. Weird. Weird. Again, the Jews took in 800,000 expelled Jews from all the Muslim countries in the region during the same period, took in all of them. I don't see this guy calling for return of the Jews to their historic homelands of Morocco, their historic homeland of Egypt and Iraq.
Today,
I mean, I don't really like, Jews can go live wherever the fuck they want. Last time I checked, like, there were quite a few of them in New York. There's quite a few here in Colorado. The free movement of, like, Jewish people is not in question. They can go pretty much anywhere. So, like, what are we talking about? And at the end of the day, if they went to Morocco or any of those countries and we saw some, like, horrible rash of violence, do you think that there'd be an international outcry? Yeah, there probably would be. But it seems like when it comes to Palestinians and the extermination of them by the Israeli Defense Force, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest in that. I'm just curious that. It's almost like everyone should be as pissed when Palestinians aren't given a chance to live on their land, and Jewish folks aren't given a chance to live on whatever land they want to live on. It's almost like everyone should be able to live wherever the fuck they want to live. And it's almost like ethno-states aren't the answer. It's also why Saudi Arabia is kind of garbage. Oh, I'm sorry, not kind of garbage. Utter fucking garbage. Again, ethno-states, garbage. Like, we can solve this by being like, no more ethno-states. Enough.
about 70% of all Gazans are considered refugees from the 1948 expulsion.
Okay, pause that for a second. How is that even possible? Seriously, how's that even possible? Well, folks, unfortunately, there's a lot of...
Are we really not... Wait. We're not going to address that? We're just going to say that's not possible and move on? Wow. Really strong argument you had there. Really refuted that one, didn't you, Ben? God. It's just... Again, the history lessons, they're meaningless. They're meaningless. They're distractions. It's all just a bunch of, let's talk about, let's track back as, like, let's keep tracking back as far as we can until we get to, like, fucking Sumeria or some shit. And it's like, this is a fucking waste of time. We understand the situation on the ground. And we understand what it would look like if these were any other two groups. But, we gotta do like a fucking, I gotta take AP fucking history, AP fucking world history, until it's like, all right, now can we get to the part where it's like, oh yeah, well, Israel's been in control of Gaza for however fucking long, and they've just decided this entire time that they've had the ability to have decision-making power, that they're just gonna kind of let the people in there, barely live what is a contemporary functional life. Like, that's just what they landed on, But the thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to, like, click on one of these, like, things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.